Welcome back. Thank you for staying with KTN Prime. We continue with our deliberations right here in studio. I'm joined by Cheruiyot, the Senate Majority Leader, and Kericho Senator, as we talk about a raft of issues that are playing out in the country. Senator, thanks for your patience. Let's continue. As Alia hinted, I'd like us to talk about this Parliament purge, because allies of former DP Gachagua in the Senate have been axed from chairpersons, slots of powerful committees and placed on less influential ones, if you can call them that. Just to mention a few of your colleagues, Joe Nyotu, Karungo Athangwa, Joe Methu, were among the first victims. So I don't know, should I call this a purge or simply a reconstitution of the Senate committees?
No, I was very clear about this when I was asked days after making these changes, that these members have publicly stated that they no longer read from the same script with us, that they think what we are implementing doesn't sit well with them. You know, as a committee chairperson is not a very easy position to occupy, because it involves many of time handling business that is government related. You know, you anchor policy positions into law now through a legislative process. So if you're out there and you claim that housing is a scam, SHA is not working, blah, 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 all these other things that you do from Friday to Sunday, wouldn't I be foolish if on Monday I trust you now with the same policy proposals and expect that you'd run them through? So I felt respectfully that it's better that as a majority side, we seed some of these committee chairpersons into people who agree with us. Remember the previous conversation about what conversations we've had with ODM and how some of the ideas agree with us in this time and space. So it was simply to let them handle lighter duties.
Okay. Good way of putting it. So, and you're a member of the legislature, which has been accused of being an appendage of the executive, that you simply rubber stamp the wheels of the executive. Well, what do you say to this?
It's not an accurate reflection.
Why is that?
It's a common Kenyan phrase by you guys in the media and citizens out there who imagine that the executive and legislature must always fight for there to be, I don't know what, exciting news, or for people to celebrate and say, yeah, the executive lost or something. Let me tell you, each bill, for example, just using legislature, because remember, our legislatures exist for three primary reasons, maybe to legislate, to oversight, and to represent your own people. So let's even pick this tenet of legislation alone. I can tell you without a fact that in my time as a majority leader the last 2.5 years, there is no bill that has landed at my desk from the state law office where government bills have drafted, and it has returned there in its original format. Many other times, in fact, the fight is always between us and them, where they always insist and say, but you guys have mutilated the whole idea of what you wanted, and say, excuse me, but we are the legislature. This is how we feel. We respond to what the citizens tell us during public participation. We respond to what stakeholders ask of us as legislators. I don't think it is an accurate reflection of Parliament, because what people want is that they want to hear and read in the news that Parliament has completely either rejected a proposal from the executive and so on and so forth. But you forget one thing. We are a constitutional democracy, and each institution complements the other. The judiciary, the legislature, the executive. Remember, we campaign together. We go out during the campaigns and we seek a parliamentary majority so that we are able to implement the campaign promises that we give to the citizens through a legislative process. But that is just one example that I have given to you, that part of my job on a daily basis involves trying to listen into the cries of members of the executive who perhaps are following through a legislative process and they are not happy with certain clauses that have been added, others that have been dropped. So it's a very complicated process.
Can I give you an example? Because the naysayers, if you can call them that, mention that in an ideal situation, the parliamentary committees should be allowed to function independently, and the membership of these particular committees should elect their chairs and deputies. So if this list comes from State House, what's the net effect? Because there seems to be no oversight. Because you have to bow to the whims of whoever put you there.
It's not from State House in the context that you guys try to put it. It is through a party leadership process. Why? Because remember, a party formation is a very broad thing. Kenya Kwanza, if you may put it, has representation of members of parliament from almost 30 counties. If it was left to just members of parliament alone to decide who becomes chair of which particular place, how you arrange yourself in committees, then the party can end up losing support. Why? The majoritarian attitude takes root, and you find that all chairpersons say come from one particular county. So there is a need to balance your political formation and ensure that as a part of the party leadership, which is now the angle that many people refer to as a State House or Orange House or whichever part guiding parliament, is just part of trying to balance your political formation, ensuring that each part of the country at least has a representation. Otherwise, if it was left to members of parliament alone, how do you achieve that particular balance? So there is the need, like the interrelationship between the party leader, the president, or opposition leader, and still party leader, where you need to provide guidance to members of your house and say, as a party, we will be presenting candidate X for chairperson or vice chairperson or membership in this particular committee, so that you ensure that there is a balance in the team,
All right. Okay, fair point. I'd like us to talk about former Prime Minister Raila Odinga just briefly, because he's been termed by critics as a serial election loser, always at the political high table, time and time again, because this is his fourth handshake, if we can refer to it that way. And there are varied views by President William Ruto across the years in terms of how he views former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and the art of always staying relevant, as he's commonly referred to, the enigma of Kenyan politics. Let's listen in to this views by President William Ruto.
Wamezoea hiyo tabia mbaya, wanaleta fujo ati ndio waingie kwa serikali. Walikuja wakaletea fujo Moi akawapatia cooperation. Wakakuja wakasumbua Kibaki, wakaenda na nusu mkate. Wakakuja wakazungusha Uhuru, wakaenda na handshake. Hii serikali ya mahasla hii iko hiyo maneno kweli? Hii ya mahasla hakuna handshake, hakuna nusu mkate. Mtu ya kitendawili kazi ambayo tumebakisha ni kuweka yeye kwa wheelbarrow mpaka Bondo. Hakuna kazi nyingine imebaki.
You asked me a direct question whether there will be a handshake because of this situation. I want to tell you there will be no handshake. But there will be an engagement in Parliament on the issues that have been raised. Those that Parliament can resolve, they will be resolved. And when I say there will be no handshake, I know that there is a context, like we were being told here, please have a handshake. Unfortunately for us in Kenya, a handshake has a different connotation. And that is the one that I am talking about. The handshake that brings the opposition and government into some conundrum and a mongrel and an outfit that is undemocratic, unconstitutional, and illegal. We are a democracy.
Well, we're a democracy, Senator. It seems we are looking at a conundrum where we can't differentiate between the opposition and the leadership, the Kenya Kwanza leadership. What do you have to say in response to President William Ruto's own words?
But there is an opposition. There is a...
But you just questioned...
That gathering that meets in Serena every other 2 days.
You just questioned their efficiency.
Yeah, because like I told you, I don't want to spend a lot of time discussing them anyway, because they are least of our concern, to be honest. And these are people I know very well. All of them. I haven't been in politics too long, but I can tell you who can put together a political machine to run for president.
Okay,
that team cannot, so it's least of my concern. Anyway, what's important is this conversation. You know, politics is not static.
True.
It moves, it changes. The president is partly right in what he predicted. He said a lot of the things will be sorted in Parliament. What he didn't say at that time, which is what is happening, that others may have to be sorted outside of Parliament. But circumstances, I believe, changed. It's not every day that you have to impeach a key member of the executive, and with it comes ramifications and challenges that arise which have to be addressed. And it's also not every day that you find yourself in the economic difficulty that Kenya finds itself in, and therefore you need a more stronger political base to try and address some of those emerging issues. So maybe at that time that's what he thought, that it was never going to happen. But slowly by slowly, you realize that never say never in politics.
So what do you tell those people who believe that, you know, I don't want to repeat the words by the president, that Raila Odinga would be heading back to Bondo? Because there are a section of Kenya Kwanza farm supporters who took that word to the bank.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
But they live in Kenya. And they know what has happened.
Only a fool doesn't change his mind.
No, not really. They know how we found ourselves here. We just didn't wake up one night and say, oh, by the way, let's start conversing with those that agree with us in the way that we're moving. There has been a long winding road that eventually we find ourselves here and we say, let's move and flow with it. Such is life. If you want to enjoy life more, you should never be fixated with the past. You always try to respond to present issues and you flow with the tide.
Okay. But the past, equally, we learn from the past.
Of course.
Either way, we have to balance
both.
That's
true.
Okay, let's listen into what Raila Odinga had to say recently about some of the issues that are facing Kenyans, because I'd like us to talk about them. Because we've heard from the ODM leader mentioning that if they're to continue working with the Kenya Kwanza government, it's not just the NADCO implementation, other demands are on the table. Let's listen in.
Maisha, gharama maisha imepanda, ushuru iko juu, kupani matibabu, mambo ya SHA bado haijafanya kazi sawa sawa. Wako na shida. Kwa upande mwingine, upande ya ugatuzi, shida hii ni kwamba pesa haiji ya kutosha hapa chini ya kufanya kazi sawa sawa. Vile vile wamesema ati mambo ya miundo msingi vile vile haendeshi sawa sawa. Mambo ya hii ujenzi ya masoko, hata hii affordable housing vile vile kuna changamoto. Issues of abductions and torture of the victims, sometimes killing of those victims, is something that is completely unacceptable. That we said it even in Busia, and we said it yesterday in Mombasa, and it has been repeated here in the resolutions that we have agreed on today.
Okay, a couple of issues. I'd like us to start on SHA, because we can't gamble with healthcare. And perhaps borrowing from what President William Ruto said just today, do you believe those who are complaining about SHA are simply benefactors of NHIF corruption? Because there's surely Kenyans who have been affected by the teething problems in this new SHA system, and it definitely stands between them and accessing affordable healthcare, universal health coverage. What do you make of this?
He spoke about those that are generating propaganda against SHA. I think not the complaints. Let's separate the two. He said that there are people who are hell-bent on misinforming the country on what this SHA program is about. And the reason, your guess is as good as mine, is because they were previously, there were beneficiaries of the broken system in NHIF.
So is SHA working?
Yes, it is working to the best of the design that was laid out when we passed the 4 pieces of legislation. What percent can I give it at this point in fulfillment of what we envisioned? Anywhere between 65 and 70%. There's still 30% to go.
And what is the government doing about this 30%?
Remember, we must ask ourselves, what do people mean when they say SHA is not working? Therefore, you must revert back and ask yourself, what is SHA supposed to do? So that people say whether it's doing it or it ain't doing it.
There shouldn't be systemic issues.
Is a universal health care program that government of Kenya intends to roll out across the Republic of Kenya, where when you enlist citizens, they sign on to a medical insurance program so that when they are unwell and they go to hospital, they get treated, and depending on the gazetted packages, the government is able to pay for them. To the best of my research, and I have done some good research about this because I've visited quite a number of hospitals, both in my own county and here in Nairobi. Many of the patients that I found in hospital who are registered with SHA had their bills paid. And therefore, has it lived up to the expectation of what an insurance, a medical insurance is supposed to do? Yes.
I'd say no, because you've said many. We're talking about those who are left behind.
No,
we have to
by the
bring
way,
them
when
on
I
board.
when I say many, perhaps maybe I should correct it. It is every single person that I met in hospital and they were registered with SHA, their bills had been sorted. What varies is how much. And the problem is, remember, with NHIF, we had only about, I think, 6 million Kenyans that were registered onto the program and were contributing. SHA, I think now is somewhere near 20 million. So there are many people who this is their first time interaction with a medical insurance scheme. And many, like the people, quite a number of the people, there's somebody who walked up to me and said, hey, this thing is not working. And I said, okay, I'm willing to assist you. What's the problem? They showed me they had just been discharged and they said, my bill is 59,000. They've only paid 30. So I had to push them aside and explain to them that this is a medical insurance. It's not possible that it will clear everything that you understand. There are those that had been turned back, say, from the referral facility. They have told SHA does not work here. It's because you cannot start from a level 5 facility. You have got to get a referral from either level 2, level 3. So there are things, there are genuine problems that Kenyans are facing which can be gotten rid of by better explanation and some of them learning. Because you have to appreciate that for a good number of our citizens, our colleagues, unlike me and you, this is their first interaction with a medical insurance program. And therefore, there are certain things that they'll struggle to understand with this regard. Second and most important thing is that there is an intentional misinformation campaign that's being run by our media, that's being run by our political opponents. Yes, exactly.
We tell about the successes of SHA.
No. I have never seen a Kenyan media station go and interview citizens. Yet I see citizens speak to each other on a daily basis and say, by the way, I'm a living example. I went to hospital, my bill was this much. That never gets coverage. No, what excites Kenyan media is, oh, I went to hospital, it's a lady who's protesting and saying, this system today, we were told they have a downtime. Those are the things that you want to focus on. If we don't listen to them,
who will?
No,
because you're saying it's working. There's a Kenyan who's...
Do a balanced and a fair coverage. Take your time. Part of media also involves to inform. Help even inform people and appreciate some of these things. Run programs with doctors at medical facilities who appreciate what is being done. You know?
I'd like to encourage you to watch KTN, because Saturdays we have a program called Health Digest, and we don't just show the negatives of SHA. It's balanced reporting. So kindly save time.
I will put a reminder this Saturday so that I watch.
Your comment on the Auditor General revealing that 104 billion SHA system is controlled by private individuals, a consortium. We heard from the economic advisor, David D, saying that this 104 billion associated with the platform is not government expenditure, but user fees spread over 10-year contract period.
Yeah, because, you know, I read that report and I have taken time. I can't tell, to be honest, whether it's malice or complete lack of understanding of how the program has been conceptualized on the part of the Office of the Auditor General. Therefore, because I'd like to give benefit of doubt and respectfully disagree with her and say this is in the course of her work, I'll take time to maybe respond to some of the issues that have been raised, because I saw that particular report and there are certain things that she's raising about the procurement process. She says, oh, it was not fair and competitive. The question that she doesn't respond to is that Section 114 of Public Procurement and Disposal Act of 2014 allows for that kind of specialized procurement process that was used to bring on board. Remember, we are not just aliens who've landed into Kenya. We know how difficult it is to procure a program of this magnitude in this country. Do you have a rough idea how much of default payment government pays each year for procurement programs of this magnitude that fail to take off because of battles in court for 5, 10, 15, 20 years?
Okay.
And therefore, on a program as critical as this, something that we went out and campaigned to the people of Kenya, there was no other better way of procuring it other than using a procurement procedure that is part and parcel of our law. So I don't understand why the Auditor General will turn back and say, and to the best of my knowledge, that section hasn't been challenged in court. This is not the first time that is being used in Kenya.
Okay.
She speaks, for example, about the issue that this system is owned by a consortium, which she says, ideally to her, should have been owned by government of Kenya. But appreciate the fact that where does Kenya find itself in? I have told you that, by the way, on account of our fiscal struggles presently, almost every other problem that you can think of has a relation with a crowded fiscal space. Whether it's the university funding model, this SHA, and the lack of funding to the primary healthcare fund and emergency and critical illness fund, and so on, and so many other programs, is based on the fact that we don't have sufficient resources to roll out certain programs. So what do? You go out and seek people that have the resource to spend their own money and then agree on a way through which they will recoup their investment. That is the 104 billion that he's talking about. This 104 billion is not that money that GOK has spent. It is an investment by this consortium, which has now entered a contract with government of Kenya that, having helped government of Kenya roll out universal healthcare through the various programs, provision of the digital healthcare systems, the hardware infrastructure across almost 16,000 health facilities across the country, and so many other things, over a period of 10 years, they will have recouped their investment.
So there's no conflict of interest, because when we hear these firms, these consortiums are backed by influential politicians, this kickback narrative might...
It's the... By the way, you know there's no kickback in these kind of programs. You know why? What are you kicking back? It's your own money that you're putting into a government program. So as an investor, there's nothing to kick back. Kickback happens when it's government money being put into a particular program, so that now the implementing contractor pays you part of the money. This is a completely different arrangement. It is the investor who's providing their own resources to run a program. Then over a period of 10 years, they recover the 104 billion that they're investing.
So briefly, will the rural and mission hospitals get their NHIF arrears sorted?
They will get it, but you know, I don't like how they're working. You know, when Social Health Authority was rolled out, there was all this hullabaloo about, oh, we are never going to sign on this program. A blackmail of some kind, and 9 billion shillings was released. I think that was the original sin that has led to this current onslaught on SHA, because they have realized that it is possible to blackmail the government and together with the people that are invested politically in the failure of SHA, so that you wind up and create some form of storm to push the government into a corner. I don't think that's going to work anymore. Remember, this 25 billion debt is not debt that has been accrued by the Kenya Kwanza administration.
True.
This is a historical debt of over 20 years.
By the Kenyan government.
Yes. Why do you want to assume that it can be sorted overnight?
So is there a time?
The minister came before Senate last week on Wednesday.
Yes.
And she gave her commitment that, subject to a verification process, those that will have been found out to be legible bills that were correctly incurred, there was no fraudulent process in it. They're going to be sorted.
Okay.
But the problem is many of these private facilities that used to be big players in the NHIF ecosystem have found it fertile to castigate SHA and join together with those that are either our political opponents or people that don't want this program to succeed, with the aim of either tarnishing this program and ensuring that it completely collapses. Okay. I have news for them.
But don't put them in one basket.
That is not about to happen.
We've hosted some, some medics who are implementing SHA in private hospitals, and they're saying, by the way, we don't want to go back to an HIF.
Yeah.
This SHA is working, but we want our dues. So at the end of the day...
No, I don't want to say that all of them in one basket.
All right.
But... sometimes it's hard to separate because they almost speak the same way.
Fair point. As we finalize, because we're pressed of time, assurances to end the scourge of corruption. We've had the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga talk about an end to extrajudicial killings. What can you speak to this about, kindly?
You know, two things that you raised. One is corruption and two is extrajudicial killings. On corruption has to be work in progress, and we must perhaps ask ourselves, what is it more that we can continue to do? We have before Parliament the conflict of interest bill, which I'm embarrassed to say is a bit stuck in the Senate. National Assembly has concluded. It's my intention. I wasn't in the House today because we were in Kakamega burying a colleague and a friend, but I do hope that even you can help rally senators together so that we consider the conflict of interest bill a key milestone towards trying to seal all the loopholes of corruption. I know the president, in one of his many addresses in response to the calls for accountability last year in the country, gave a commitment that by the end of this financial year, a government is going to switch to e-procurement, which leaves a traceable format of how goods and services have been procured, as opposed to the manual process that leaves loopholes for corruption.
Understandable. Yeah.
We have to strengthen and maybe resource more EACC so that we see a more coherent institution that helps the country tackle this scourge. It's not easy, but it's something that we must call on ourselves in the collective responsibility. I do hope that at some point we will have a conversation with the judiciary as well. Because many times people ask, we the legislators, people in the executive like the president, about what is it that can be done. But what people don't appreciate is that one of the weakest links in the fight against corruption in this country is a weak judicial system that never jails these suspects, that give anticipatory bail, that takes inherently long, to determine these cases.
I think I remember President Ruto mentioning that there should be a time frame for these corruption cases. Is there any progress on that?
I think that's something I need to check. By the way, that's one of the fairest proposals that I have seen made.
Okay.
The argument was that we can set up a special division of our judicial system, just like we have electoral disputes resolved within 6 months, and you have a decision, so that we have corruption cases, especially the high-profile ones that involves senior public officials, concluded within 6 months, and you have the verdict. This business of a case dragging for 5-10 years, then it will not provide the impetus that is needed to conclude on these cases. On this issue of extrajudicial killings
and enforced disappearances.
Yeah. It's something that we must contextualize, because I continue to hear people speak on enforced disappearances. It's something that we must get to the root cause and understand who is it that is cracking down on government critics, so to speak. And of course, I've listened to Inspector General of Police, the Minister in charge of our security, where everybody is denying and say it's not us. Then the effort must be put on the Inspector General of Police again to answer back and say, how far are they with their investigation in establishing who is it that is running an abduction racket, if you may want to put it that way, so that the country can have closure with regards. But the point that people miss is that are we in a better space than what we were a few years ago? I hold the view that yes. Why? Remember,
life
what
is too many. Come,
of
yes,
course,
we might be better, but we can't.
Of course, in fact, that's a struggle. You've picked it right out of my heart, right out of my mind and mouth. That unfortunately, we can't say that if then 20 people are dying and now one, we're in a better place. Even one life means the world to family and friends of those particular people. And it's unfortunate. But remember, we must push the right office to give us the answers. Article 249 of our Constitution. Inspector General exercises independent command over the police services of this country. We have for far too long reduced this conversation to be about the executive, the minister in charge of security, the president.
Okay.
Much as they are charged with the overall responsibility of coordinating government, I believe we don't demand sufficient answers from our investigative agencies. You know, there are people who've been killed, and we don't hear from them after not even one suspect arrested. Take the example of, say, the young man who was killed somewhere, I think, was it in Njoro or something, and was said he was a blogger and had disagreed with so-and-so.
Yes.
We don't get to hear a lot of those stories, how they end up concluding, whether there was any single suspect. I want to request of the police inspector general to be a bit more forthright with such information, because it helps in confidence building and people begin to appreciate that something is being done about it. Otherwise, then given the kind of political space that we find ourselves in, then people will be bound to point fingers and say, maybe you guys as a government, you know, now lumping us, all of us together, have a thing or two to do with this.
Okay, asante sana. That's all the time we had, Majority Leader. We definitely appreciate your input, giving us your take on a raft of issues that are playing out in the country, from politics to governance to matters under the legislative arm of government, and equally issues that are touching on everyday Kenyans when it comes to the corruption and the extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances. Asante sana.
Asante.
We're looking forward to more conversations. That's all we had for you right here on KTN Prime. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're adequately informed. My name is Jesse Rogers. On behalf of the entire team, including Ashley Mazuri and our sign language interpreter Maresha Witi, we say good evening and good night. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.
Thanks.